because, you know, I used to read the Greek New Testament and all of that, right? I studied the Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? I believe it's called Torah. You ever heard of that? Tetavim, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, which is the Old Testament.
The Torah, but,
yeah.
But I never. But there's so many books that were written by philosophers, and they're in libraries all over the world. They're not books that are inspired of God.
Right.
And so that's the thing that people have to be careful with. So when you see the thing about the holy writings or the inspired writings of God is they have been passed down over centuries.
Right.
Accurately. Like the Dead Sea Scrolls, you know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Those were some of the latest.
Those are actually the oldest Hebrew writings.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, in the book of Isaiah, and it really showed that all the things that were written from the more modern scrolls that they had written the Bible from, or translated the Bible from, were accurate, because the Bible, which has been translated, you know, in the beginning, very few people could read the Bible. If you didn't read Hebrew or Aramaic,
right,
or if you didn't read Greek,
right,
then you know you couldn't read.
You couldn't talk to people either.
That's right. But see, like our Bible here, it's translated into an English version of it.
Exactly.
That words that we understand, the words that we can apply when we read them and say, "Oh, I know what that's talking about."
Right.
Whereas you take even the King James Bible, which is a great Bible, but it was translated back in the 1600s.
Yeah, 1611. Yeah,
1611. And so back then they talked a little bit different than we do today.
Right, right. They actually, when you look at the name Jesus, it's not even a J in there. It's I think it's Isis.
It starts with
what? Yeah,
there you go.
There you go.
Hey, he is listening. Be careful now. You watch what you're doing.
Yeah. But also, when you go further back than that, right? There was a lot of gods during that time in Greek. You ever heard of Pan?
I know a lot of Greek, you know, Aristotle, Plato.
Right. It's, you know, speaking of that, I hate to jump topics like that. But speaking of that, I noticed Paul quotes a lot of Aristotle's, Socrates, Plato, and Seneca. You familiar with Seneca? He quotes a lot of their stuff.
Well, some of it was not inaccurate. Some of it was accurate, but some of it was not. And these were philosophers. They were not. They're not necessarily
prophets and stuff, right?
Well, they were not like priests or holy guys.
Exactly.
Who knew the Bible. Most of them were Greek philosophers. But so one has to be careful about some of the things that they say.
Yeah.
Because it's just like today. A lot of the people who's supposed to have knowledge of the Bible, even as far as your priests and your popes and
right,
pastors, they really don't. They don't give you the information that comes from the Bible. Most of it is stuff that comes from
them. Yeah, exactly.
And so one has to study the Bible themselves and read it and try to comprehend it so they can make application to it and understand what they're reading.
Right.
So that's what we do. That's why we come around and we encourage people to read the Bible.
Yeah, I wish my dad was here because he's not that big on it, and he gets on me for being so big on reading the Old Testament. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's good that you do that. That's really good. In fact, I got something I want to show you. It will really help you even benefit more from reading the Bible. And it's just a little brochure that we offer that we show to people. And this is talking how to get more from your reading of the Bible. How about that? Right in line with what you just talked about. And it's just a real short articles in there to give you some insight as to how you can benefit more from your reading if you're reading, in a Bible that you can comprehend and understand. Of course, now you can look at them online. In fact, if you go to jw.org,
I think I was actually online looking at some Bible stuff. Yeah,
jw.org, you got all that.
45. That's what I was doing.
Well, listen, let's get talking. What's your name?
It's Clint.
Clint, do y'all just move in here?
We've been here like 3 years.
Have you really? I never caught anybody at home here.
Hey, he's always gone. That's his girlfriend's car. You usually don't see that over here. He's over there. So
that's your dad you're talking about?
Yeah, my dad is He's ex-military or just retired. So
Well, let me leave you this magazine.
All
Let me
right.
give it to you and look through it and see what you think about it. In fact, it talks about getting some of the know the Bible characters, which you do, some of the men, some of the women that were outstanding in their faith,
Right.
and it talks about improving your Bible knowledge and your life by following the Bible.
Right.
But it's good to find people who are as interested in the Bible as you are, because
Right.
there's not many in the world today that could care less about the Bible. They don't
Exactly.
even want to read the Bible.
Exactly.
And when you think about it, what's it, Clint?
Yeah.
Is that years ago, people died, got killed, got burned at the stake for
Yeah.
wanting to have a Bible,
Yeah.
for having a Bible.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's amazing how Satan has influenced the people today to the point that they don't even want to know about it.
Yeah.
The Bible has.
Yeah, man. I think what you was talking about, I think that happened during the Lutherans and all of that. Martin Luther. I think that was like the 1800s, like proclamation or something like that.
They translated the Bible. You know, you had a lot of them that put their life on the line
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
And to teach what was true. I was trying to think of just some. My mind. And anyway, some of the translators that went through being killed, being burned at the stake, and called heresy because of what they were trying to do for the common people, so the common people could read it, but the religious leaders only wanted them to be able to know what was in the Bible, and they could teach what they wanted to. If the common people didn't know what the Bible said, then they could tell anything. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so that's why it's such a great privilege to have the Bible and be able to read it today. So, tell what's his name?
Elijah.
Elijah. Good talking to you, buddy.
Oh,
All right, we
All right, all right.
Nice talking to
Y'all
you.
be safe, man.
To catch you again.
Y'all be safe.
All
right.
This is true. I don't know if I introduced you.
Okay. Nice to meet
He's my
y'all, man.
bodyguard.
All right, man. Y'all be safe. Dang, man. They didn't want to talk that much, man. Well, they didn't want to talk that much, guys. Israel and Shalom, by the way. It's Shalom, my man. Yeah, I just walked outside, and there they go. They pulls up, Jehovah's Witness. Ain't that something? Couldn't get out what I wanted to get out because the goddamn cracker talks too much. But, it is what it is, man. He had a Jake with him talking about that's his bodyguard and whatnot. So, I mean, it is what it is, man. Yeah, so.
yo.
Yo, Shalom.
Yeah, shalom, man. I see you had a visitor.
Yeah, there's some Jehovah's Witnesses, man. They just left.
Yeah.
I just walked outside and they pulled up in the yard. I was finna go check the mail.
Yeah, it be like that sometimes, man. You handle them well, though. Just kind of, let them.
I was trying to ease into some more history, but he kept swerving from that because he don't know shit about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's why I kind of like, it's Zeus, like.
Con, I was finna go into Dionysus and all these other wine guys too, but again, he kept swerving. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Get him.
Yeah, man. Nah, man. You gonna make that man gonna have a drinking problem, man. Might be too fragile for that kind of truth.
Too talking about that's his bodyguard.
Who said that?
They said, "All right, Elias, or bye, Elias." He had a Jake with him, and I guess you got kicked out after that. And he said, "It's my bodyguard right here."
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nah, I'm actually a property management been calling me. So I'm trying to upgrade to a bigger spot for me and my queen, man. So yeah, we've been. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. That's beautiful.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Praise be to Yahweh, man. It's been yeah, it's been cool, man. She's been kind of helping me kind of formulate my thoughts, man. Because like I say, what I'm coming out with, I got a brother that's older than me, man.
Oh, Salak. Hey, we live, by the way. I recorded some of that. So.
Okay, we live now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got a brother that man, he's been fighting a good fight in the court of law, uh, trying to put the Most High Yah and His people at the forefront in the judicial system.
Right.
And between that, I've been caught up in a lot of like legal. That's kind of like my general area of expertise is legalese and dealing with the Torah in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been our goal to try to put the sovereign God known as Yod Hey Wah Hey at the forefront of His people, so that we can be in a position to not be harassed, and that we can serve Him in a capacity where we can be fully in our proper status. And that's just one element, and it's in scripture too. I
Right.
found it all through the Torah, where it talks about sovereignty and just in reference to us. We all talk about it, wanting to have our own and wanting to do our own thing. I mean, it's in a general sense, because I've dealt with a lot of Moorish brothers. Some of the Moorish brothers, they got some good knowledge, but it's lacking some elements with the Most High,
Uh-huh.
and it get a lot of them in a trap, because they're talking about this kind of individual sovereignty thing, where I mean the literal collective of the children of Israel actually coming together and taking a stand, just as they did in Egypt, saying, let my people go so that they can serve the God of their forefathers. And that thesis that I'm talking about writing ties in some of the loose ends with ancient Egypt, um, and our people in their travels in Egypt, because even in Exodus, when it talked about Moshe, when he went to Midian, and he helped water the flocks and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and Father asked, how did you get home so early? And she said, an Egyptian delivered us out of delivered us out of his hand. Same thing with Joseph. They did not recognize Joseph because he was an Egyptian. On and on, you see these references where we were commonly mistaken. And if you go to the period of Moses, we were Egyptians. And the important thing is not saying, really who came from who and what, because I don't like the idea that they say we stole something.
Mm-hmm.
None of this was stolen, because Yod Hey Wah Hey is a universal entity that's been around long before the Egyptians.
Exactly.
And that's where I get a bit of a fire to try to tear down a lot of the
Hey,
misconceptions.
hey,
Go ahead,
real
brother.
quick, Salat. I don't mean to cut you off, but just to add to that point about the Yod Wahe being around, it's been around since Adam, man. You can show this. You can find this in I think it's Genesis chapter 2 or 3, chapter 4, I think chapter 4, the last verse when Seth said, and man began to call upon the name of the Lord, and it's all
Yep.
capitalized. When you go into the Hebrew, it's Yod Hey Wahe, Yahweh. You know.
Yep. That's on point, Con. I I've been into this for a little while. I've
Hmm.
somewhat, kind of fell off the trail, just getting tired, because a lot of Israelites don't want to, they're not very open to the idea of kind of bridging the gap in history, because they're looking at the
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And it's true what we see from some of the Kemetic endorsers, that they're off a beaten path, where they don't know much about ancient Egypt.
Exactly.
And this is going to help bridge the gap and mend some fences, to actually where we would be able to deal with our Kemetic brothers and sisters, and get them to see the light that this is in your history too. Because a part of your history is our history, and what we did afterwards is ours.
Right.
You know, Moses was an Egyptian, and it
Right.
says that in the scriptures. And even I want to let me see if I can look it up. I'm about to get back in the crib in a second. Let me see if I'm looking at my phone. I'm sitting in the car right now. I want to say it's the book of Hosea, where it says that he came out of Egypt. Yahweh. And you know, if if we're going to really build with our people, as I was telling, I think I was talking to you all. I was talking about, we need to understand the literature that our people are getting in order to better be able to convey the message to them. It's not that they're completely out of whack, but they understand, like, Ra as a sun deity. Well, which dynasty are you talking about where he was a sun deity? Because he did become a sun deity, but the belief systems of the dynasties change more frequently than people would probably give reference to where at one point Ra was known as the hidden ones, and we are known as the hidden ones. That's how when they talk about Israel, the eye was always the eye was the ones that could see. They were always hidden, and they were the elite class. They were the strength of Egypt. And where I'm trying to bridge the gap is where time and history meets our spirituality. Reality and spirituality come together in one. I know Yahweh is the end all be all, and I know his Torah is what's sacred for me in my life and how I govern myself.
Exactly.
But as I often tell people of how to get the message to a wider audience, is that you have to understand the wider audience's origins and where they're coming from. As I say, like a New Testament Israelite, or Messianic, it will call you. They're pretty much it's pretty much easy to define what they're looking at. They'll have the New Testament. They may have the Maccabees. They may have the Book of Enoch or something to try to build that bridge to Christ. But it stands on its own that there's no other God but Yahweh. Whereas when you're dealing with some of the outsiders, like say like Muslims, you have to go into Islam, and you have to go to the Quran in order to actually point to the brother or sister that this is where you go to the wrong side of the brain. This is where you're kind of getting mixed up with your own beliefs, not looking at the facts of the matter.
Right.
I mean, even in the Quran, it says if the people of the book steadfast by the Torah, they will rise and be good. Like, so if we're the people of the book, and if we're supposed to steadfast by the Torah, then why am I in the Quran? You know what I'm saying? So it's easy to kind of go from those entities, but when you're dealing with something like Egyptology or comedic, I don't know, they call it comedic science. You have to dive in some of these books that some of these brothers and sisters are portraying as historical facts, because some of it is actually pseudo history. Some of it is has been contended and has been debunked. But because Israelites are not some Israelites, they got some Israelites that are heavily into it, but they're still missing the pieces where we were very friendly with ancient Egypt. I mean, there was a time of peace between the house of Jacob and the Egyptian. And that's really what I'm going to set out to do. I fall back now, brother, and let you do your thing, man. I listen to you for a little bit.
1 second, bro.
Sure.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, that's some good stuff you're bringing out, bro. A lot of stuff people don't know, don't talk about, and I think they don't know because they don't study as hard as a lot of brothers, such as ourselves. You know, and study the hard study, man. It goes. I mean, the hard work shows because, as you can see, it goes in with the studies. Like the studies you bring forth, the messages you bring out, the way you present it, and so on. And your presentations are A1 in my opinion. you know, Sometimes I'll be like, man, this nigga got a PowerPoint in his car or something. You know what I mean? But And now this is all stuff that you remember because you study. You know what I mean?
Man, Tadawa, brother. I appreciate that, man.
No problem. Um, and just to switch topics real quick, man, I want to share something with the people. All right. So hold up. So the guy brought up Timothy's, I don't know, Second Timothy 3 or something, which is Paul's writings, and that's pretty much the topic of this video. So this goes hand in hand. So I just want to show our people the folly. Right. Look, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can. I'm looking on my phone, but I can still
Okay.
see it, and I can go to Facebook too, so it's cool.
Con. So you can see here, I got into it with somebody. This is my post. If you believe you can't teach with your head covered, delete me and go study and pray. Right. So one sister said, man and female, post 1 Corinthians 11. I post Exodus 28, 4 through 5, and then 28, 40 through, I think, 43. Yeah, 43. And then she replies to it, right? Right. So I ask her, where is it at? Right. She says, loins, the part of the body on both sides of the spine between the lowest false ribs and hip bones, right? I don't think this scripture is talking about men preaching with their head covered. It's actually talking about making garments for Aaron or for beauty, kind of like style, or kind of like for style, right? So I asked about a bonnet, and then she says, it's for your head, but some people only read the Torah and not the Bible. Some people actually only believe in the Torah, but me personally, I never read the Torah. I usually read scriptures from the Bible and some books, all right, and so on. So I said, well, sister, the Torah was here before the Bible, before the New Testament. So again, the question I asked earlier still applies. Who words mean more, Torah or Paul? And then she says, right here, Qudash La Yahweh, the Bible does say listen to Paul's words like they are Christ. So I would say Paul's words are more important. So
Struggle is real.
exactly. That's the point I'm making, man. And you can see some other guy comments on my post. 1 Corinthians 11:4. Every man praying to prophesy and have his head covered dishonoreth his head. What part don't you understand? He would have said in the Ebonics, Hebrew, in the Ebonics, Hebrew, you clowns be speaking, right? So he comes off all aggressive, and I keep it peaceful, right? And he says Paul preached the same laws as Jesus Christ. Stop playing games, bro. Using semantics, wordplay. This ain't Sesame Street. I said, okay, so where does Yahushua say don't cover your head? Where does Yahushua say I died for your sins? That's all. That's Paul's own doctrine and why he got stoned nearly to death. All right.
Calm.
He cuts himself by posting Matthew 5:17 when he says, "Think not that I come to destroy the law of the prophets. I'm not going to destroy, but fulfill." And I say my point exactly, and Paul contradicts that in Hebrews 10. Let's get that real quick, right? Hebrews 10, right? I'm gonna show you, not just you, but the people, how Paul contradicts Yahushua, right? Verse 3. But Hebrews 10, verse 3, but in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he saith, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. And burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast no pleasure. Thou hast had no pleasure. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book. It is written to me to do thy will, O God, right? Quoting Psalms, I believe it's 48 or 49, right? Above, when he said, sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offering for sin, thou wouldest not, neither has pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. Then said he, lo, I come to thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. By the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. All right, now here's the problem with that. Ezekiel 45. And you can see consecration of the land. Verse 1, moreover, when ye shall divide by lot the land of inheritance, ye shall offer an oblation unto Yahweh in holy portion of the land. The length shall be the length of 5 and 20,000 reeds, and the breadth shall be 10,000. It shall be holy in all the borders thereof round about, right? Now, it goes into the prince's portion, verse 7. And a portion shall be for the prince on the one side, and on the other side of the oblation of the holy portion, and of the possession of the city before the oblation of the holy portion, and before the possession of the city from the west side westward, and from the east side eastward. And the length shall be over against one of the portions from the west border unto the east border. Now, right here we see offerings and feasts. This is when we're going to be in the kingdom. But Paul said, what? By the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. Basically implying sacrifices are never going to happen again. So this is 45 Ezekiel verse 13. It says, this is the oblation that ye shall offer. The sixth part of an ephah of an omer of wheat, ye shall give the sixth part of an ephah of an omer of barley. All right, verse 15, jumping to 15, right? This is the animal. And one lamb out of the flock, out of 200, out of the fat pastures of Israel for a meat offering, and for a burnt offering, and for a peace offerings, and for peace offerings, to make reconciliation for them, saith Adonai Yahweh. All right, so not only does that cut the so-called Old Testament, but then you're cutting Matthews 5 and 17 when you say this right here, sacrifices of animals. Any other law is still in effect, bro. Like, come on, man. You just cut yourself. Think not that I come to destroy the law. Come on, man. These guys are ridiculous, man. Like they put Paul over the Torah. They put Paul over their own idol.
Yeah, they do. Because without Paul, you don't have you don't really have much of a story about him actually being a deity. I mean, he exalted himself at certain points.
Yeah.
Like John, John, he was he was acting an ass in John, to say the least. But the thing that's interesting about that is like Matthew 5 and 17. I've often showed that to many, not just so-called Israelites, and I remember I was talking about it last night with you guys. I was like, how in the world, how if you don't read the Torah, how do you even know or associate yourself as an Israelite? Because they're nowhere to be found in the New Testament. Like nowhere is there a Hebrew Israelite in the New Testament. Everything is centered around being known as Christ and Paul's writings. So for her to say that, but yet talk about brothers in the truth, it was a bit odd, to say the least. Now, what the other brother was coming with, I mean, they look at that as he's fulfilling a prophecy right there, rather than saying, hey, when you say you come to fulfill something, it means you're going to you come to live out, which means live by the Torah. You're gonna live your life according to Torah. And the Messianics, the Christians, everybody of that ideology all point that as being a prophecy that he's fulfilling the future coming of Elijah, of Michael, of David. I mean, he literally gets like all three of those individuals in certain points of the so-called Old Testament. He apparently fulfills it all in one fell swoop. And that's why I've often argued that he's a Masonic compilation of the children of Israel.
Yes, I'd agree, right? And also in Greek, I mean, the word fulfill, it means to make complete. So in Greek terms, you're saying that he came to complete the law, make the law complete. So in other words, the law was incomplete before he came? I mean, come on, man. It's how you know people don't study their own stuff, man.
Nor do they accept that he by their standards of the word perfect, he was not a perfect man. He
Of
broke
course.
he broke multiple laws of the Torah when he bared his own witness. I mean, this guy admitted that I cannot bear my own witness, but then comes back and says I'm going to bury my witness like 3 chapters later.
Right.
Um, it's one of those things that I've talked about our people as Israelites, and when I first got into this, I met a ton of so-called messianic, or they believed that Yeshua, Yehoshua, at the time was real popular.
Right.
I don't know, Yahweh Shai. I was like, oh man, they called him, man, they gave him a fancier name. They call him Yahweh Shai.
Yeah, yeah, I was shy. It ain't no I sound in Hebrew, you know.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, because even if you were to actually go to real Hebrew, that would actually be a Y, and it would not make that sound. So I don't know where they get
Yeah.
that from. Uh,
The I,
um,
the ayan makes the A or the I sound.
mm, mm,
It's like sha, how sha.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Which, which we know are actual characters of the Old Testament. I mean, these are
Yep.
individuals who existed before this person. But see, here's the thing, though. You have no reference in Greek that parallels to Hebrew. You're basically placing Hebrew characteristics on Greek people. I mean,
Yep.
there's no mistake that it's a Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. Just I mean, I'm just using plain English.
Yep.
All these names bear either Elohim or Yah in their titles, and you mean to tell me all of a sudden it shifts gears to Luke and Matthew, and I've seen the attempts to try to make it all Hebrew. I think I see like Yahoo and all this crap, but
Yep.
it's like it's a nice try, and I get it. I get where these brothers and sisters are. It's just like the old Christian argument. You don't want to accept that. What you're dealing with is possibly false. I mean,
Yep.
it's a pride thing, and
Yep.
I don't know about that sister. I mean, she may more than likely, because I mean, according to her, she doesn't even read the Torah. Probably
No,
doesn't even read the
she
the
said
New
she never
Testament.
read it.
Yeah, never read it. Which is, I don't think she knows the first 5 books in the Bible is considered to be the Torah. She may not be aware of that. Fair enough.
Oh,
Um,
it's a lot. And the other brother ain't aware of that either because he says Torah means the Old Testament.
yeah. See, that's yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, see, that's more that's more of that remedial light stuff right there, man. I mean,
Right?
yeah, I mean these guys they pigeonholed themselves,
Yeah.
and it's we could talk to them and we could try to enlighten them. I think a platform like this where you just leave it available to them to when it's time, if it's ever a time for them to come get it, then yeah, I think that's what these type of platforms are here for. Taking them on directly, kind of like how you had that embracement of that Jehovah Witness brother.
Right.
They start getting the tap dancing and doing the Carlton and all that stuff, and before
It's
you know
not
it,
unusual to be
yeah,
loved
man,
by
it's
anyone.
yeah, that's why I always say the struggle is real, man, because it's hard to get a person at a speaking level. It's a reason
Right.
why Farrakhan and all your influential Christian ministers and all these people that minister to people, one, they're at the podium, two, they have a delivery, and you don't see them often.
Right.
They're not amongst the people trying to postulate the doctrine to them, because a lot of times, man, I learned this more and more, is that our people are very image prone.
Yes.
They're very caught up in the image of what something looks like.
Yes.
That's why they love JC. That's why they love a Unk. That's why they love crosses and all these things.
Because they can see it. It's tangible.
Yeah, and that's like the thing with the Torah is it. requires the individual who commits themselves to it to take responsibility for their own actions and to not look for outside visuals of their perceptions of Yahweh, because that understanding, that connection. I mean, when Jacob wrestled with with the angel, and he had that meeting at pineal. Well, you know, what is pineal? The pineal is the pineal gland, which is in the mind.
Yes.
He wrestled with them, and the stair and the ladder that went to heaven was the staircase to heaven. This was his connection mentally with the Elohim, and he was able to hold on, to wrestle and not die, because that was the whole thing. Like, if you, outside of Moshe and Yaakov, those were basically your main people that could see him face to face. Other than that, it was not something that the average individual can get. Whereas in this case with JC, oh wow, he was a man. He was a man that came down, not realizing that each of the individuals, or the children of Israel, from David to Noah, to Abraham, to Jacob, to Moses, all these individuals are what's called malaks.
Right.
They're the malaks. They're the messengers. They're the deliverers of people. That's why I'm very much looking forward to getting more into my studies about the word Abimelech. That word Melech. The Melechs and the Molochs. We're talking about kings. We're talking about angels. We're talking about messengers. We're talking about people that were able to grab our people by the hand and guide them through the wilderness.
Yes.
You know, and they're not understanding that it's not a supernatural, dogmatic way of doing this. Is actually scientific and mathematical.
Right.
But the numbers don't add up for them, because they're not using critical thinking measures to see, hey, how does Paul say, you know, if I do not frustrate God, if righteousness comes from the law, then Christ is dead in vain. But like, how do you overlook that? Like, that's like Galatians 2, and I think 2. It starts with 2:19. I think it's ultimately 2:21.
That Galatians, brother.
Yeah, but your Galatians is literally telling you that he died in vain. If this is your concept that he is somehow a God, but yet you're telling people, even on the physical side, you're telling people keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. Yeah.
Hey, Salak, bro, I gotta cut this short, man. I gotta get ready to go.
Hey, no problem.
I gotta take a trip to Dallas, man. So.
Oh man, it's one of my favorite spots, man.
Yeah, so I'll be hitting you up. Shalom, Barakatah, by Hashem Yahweh, man.
Shalom, bro. Be safe out there.
All right, Thawada, you too.
Mm-hmm.